we want the regulator to carry out an investigation in relation to these energy companies. We want to know if these energy companies are involved in anti-competitive practices, and given the fact that wholesale prices have been reducing since December of last year, yet we haven't had any of the main energy companies, actually electricity companies, reducing their prices outside of Pinergy that has about a 1% market share. There has to be serious questions now whether these companies are operating in an anti-competitive practice, and it is the job of the regulator to protect consumers. It's also the job of the regulator to look at competition, and that's why we've written back in June for the regulator to do that job. We're waiting on a more detailed response from the regulator. But I also note that it's not just Sinn Féin. The SRI, in their commentary last June, made it very clear that if you didn't see a reduction in electricity prices after a sustained decrease in wholesale electricity prices, which has been happening since December, then you cannot rule out anti-competitive practices. And look, this has gone on far too long. We know what's happening across Europe. We've seen prices going up just as the prices went up in Ireland. But across Europe, since last October, prices have been falling, but they have not fallen here, and that's not acceptable.
I'm just wondering, what is it that you would do? What is it that Sinn Féin could or would do now? I'm thinking of people who are facing bills and dreading what's going to come through the door or into their inbox. What can happen? What practically could be done to deliver savings?
Well, the first thing, let me say, is there's a role for the regulator. That's why we have a regulator. And, I think it should be the minister, it should be the government that should be asking these questions, not the opposition, and having to spur the regulator into action in relation to this matter. We did have comments from the Taoiseach back on the 1st of March saying that he would take action against companies if they didn't reduce their prices, yet he's been completely silent ever since, and prices have remained sky high. The second thing is, through budgetary measures, there is a way of supporting households and families and workers during this period of high energy costs, and that is a proposal that we have put on the table. We note that right across Europe, whether it's in Germany and Austria and France and Poland and Luxembourg and other countries, there has been a cap in terms of electricity prices. Germany, for example, their cap will continue right through to March of next year, where they give a level, a playing field, a certainty to their citizens that you do not have to pay above this level in terms of electricity. So Ireland could follow suit in terms of our European neighbours and actually bring in such a similar scenario that would reduce electricity costs for people and give them certainty as well.
What do you say to the public when it comes to renewables and wind farms and the possible growth of them around the country?
Look, there's no doubt renewables is the future, and we have a huge potential, particularly in terms of offshore wind energy. And that's not just about dealing with the locations of them and the bids, but also making sure that we have the infrastructure there, the piers, the ports, and the investment in areas, whether it's down in Wexford or whether it's in Killybegs, to make sure that we have the capacity to actually service that type of wind farms. But look, changing from renewables away from gas, which is making up about 50% of our production or just under at the minute, it isn't an immediate issue. It's not going to reduce the cost for people overnight. What we need to do, and Charlie's absolutely 100%, we're in the middle of a cost of living crisis. Right across Europe, prices are dropping. We have sky high prices. Every single company is at the same level. They're not reducing their prices. They haven't been since last December, despite the fact that wholesale prices, the amount that they pay to buy the electricity, has reduced by 64% in the last year. They're still sticking with prices that have gone up by nearly 90% in the last 2 years. It's not acceptable. There's no explanation for it. And if the regulator needs more powers, then I'll write the legislation and we'll bring it forward the first week when the Dáil comes back. But the regulator hasn't even responded in detail.
If there was two things you could do.
The regulator hasn't, first of all, said that they need additional powers. I've corresponded them twice after I've written to them in June looking for this investigation. They're telling me that they will give me a comprehensive response in September. I think there's questions in relation to the delay there. But if they do need extra powers, if that's what they're saying, then we'll provide the legislation to give them the extra powers. There is no way that Irish consumers, that households right across this state should be punished in the way that they are with extortionate electricity prices, when we know that what's happening across Europe is they've been dropping dramatically since October of last year. We're in the middle of a cost of living crisis. Every single company is at the same level. They're not reducing their prices. They haven't been since last December, despite the fact that wholesale prices, the amount that they pay to buy the electricity has reduced by 64% in the last year. They're still sticking with prices that have gone up by nearly 90% in the last 2 years. It's not acceptable. There's no explanation for it. And if the regulator needs more powers, then I'll write the legislation and we'll bring it forward the first week when the Dáil comes back